Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I don't know when you're watching this, but today we're gonna make buttermilk scones with some blueberries. So I'm gonna show you, scones are just biscuits and they're usually a European a biscuit. So what they look like in the end, when they magically appear in the end, they will look like this. Okay, cut into a pie shape. They are not purple, they are white with purple berries in there. So I don't want to see any blue scones. They're white scones with purple. So there's our finished product. All right, so it says 1 1/2 cups of all-purpose flour. We know when we measure the flour, we learned today in our lesson, or for you the other day, we're going to over scoop and then we're going to level off. We're not tapping, we're just over scooping and leveling off. So there we go, 1 1/2 cups of flour, 2 1/2 tablespoons of sugar. So we're going to do the same thing with the sugar. We're going to fill it in and then we're going to level it off. So 2 1/2 tablespoons is 2 tablespoons plus 1 teaspoon plus 1/2 teaspoon is 2 1/2 tablespoons. Okay, this is why we need to learn our measuring and our measurements, because we need to make sure, especially in baking, that everything is accurately done. Okay, we have our baking powder, and we're going to learn this week also that baking powder needs to have an acid added to it in order to make it rise. So it's 1, see how I overflowed and then I level it off. So that's 1 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. And then I have 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda. Now those are not interchangeable. Baking soda is a base and baking powder is an acid. And the reason we're using both today is because we are using soured milk or buttermilk, and that is going to react with that acid and base. We're going to do a 1/4 teaspoon of salt just to enhance the flavor. So here I have all my dry ingredients. I have my flour, my sugar, my baking powder, my baking soda, and my salt. Now, like always, I have all those ingredients out. That's what you need to do. Get everything out that you need first, and then put it away as you go. The next thing I'm going to do is take my butter. Now it says 6 tablespoons of butter. So 1 stick of butter is 8 tablespoons. So if I cut it in half, it's 4 tablespoons. If I cut that in half, it's 6 tablespoons. So I have 6 tablespoons of cold butter. It has to be cold. You can't have this melted. Let me stir this up a little. It can't be melted, it has to be in solid form, so keep it in the refrigerator until you're ready to make your scones. All right, and then I'm just gonna take my paring knife. You can take a butter knife if you want, and I'm gonna cut it into small little pieces. Now, what I wanna do is I wanna coat this butter with flour, so it doesn't absorb so much of the liquid, and it's gonna stay nice and flaky. So if you've had little flaky biscuits, usually they do this process of cutting in the butter into the dry ingredients. So this is my 6 tablespoons of cold butter cut into small pieces. And then if you have a pastry blender at home, can either do this with your hands. You're gonna break up those butter pieces with your hands and get that flour coating all of my small butter pieces. And this is gonna melt in the oven and make it nice and tender. Or if you have a pastry blender, you can use your pastry blender to break up. Now, I was at the Dollar Tree this weekend with my granddaughter, and they have a whole huge section of utensils. Rubber scrapers, you know, my favorites, they have that, and they have all kind of utensils. So if you don't have any at home, that would be a great place to go and get some. They might not be the best quality, but for what we're doing, they're fine. Okay, so I've completely broken down my big, huge butter chunks. And now I'm going to add my lemon zest. Let me wash my hands. I'm going to add my lemon zest. Well, what lemon zest is actually the rind of a citrus fruit, your lemon or your lime, or your orange. I'm using this called lemon peel, and it calls for a tablespoon, but when we have it dry, it's 1/3 of what it is fresh. So it's very potent, so we want to use 1 teaspoon of that instead of the 1 tablespoon of regular lemon zest. So the lemon zest, I would take my box grater and I would grate the outside skin on the lemon peel, and then I would add that to this. So what the lemon does, it just gives it a little zing. Okay, it just adds a little brightness to my scones. So if you have really heavy flavors, you want to add something light to make it lighter and more flavorful. Okay, now I'm going to take my buttermilk. If you don't have buttermilk at home, I'm going to give you some, but if you don't have any at home and your recipe calls for buttermilk, all you need to do is take a little bit of lemon juice and add it to your milk, and that will sour your milk. And you don't have to go out and buy buttermilk. So those that come in little squeeze things like this, or a bottle of lemon juice, it's about a teaspoon for a cup, and that's going to give you your buttermilk. Now you see I didn't add all of that milk in at one time because I want to see how much it absorbs. If my room is dry, it's going to absorb more liquid. If my room is moist, like say I'm at home and it's raining outside and I don't have air conditioning, I would not need nearly as much of this milk. So just add enough so it is the right consistency. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to dump it out on my counter. Of course, my counter's clean. I'm going to dump it out on the countertop, put this in the sink, and I am going to mix this with my hands. I'm just going to fold it over. Just fold it over to get everything incorporated. This is a little wet, so see, even I make mistakes. This is a little wet, so I'm going to add a little bit of flour to that. Just because it's a little teeny bit, I added a little too much milk to that. So now it's a lot easier to manage. Miss Antonelli's in here helping pack your bags today.
Hi guys.
She's helping us out.
Doing oatmeal, measuring out oatmeal.
Okay, now I'm gonna I took my berries right out of the freezer because I want them to be frozen. Otherwise, if you have your berries thawed, when you go to do this, your scone is going to turn purple. So keep them frozen in the bag until you're ready to put them into your scone. So I've just piled them on top, just like that. And then I'm gonna just fold this over and mix that in without turning my dough purple. Okay. Now I'm going to press it down and make it into a circle. Just a circle. It's about 6 inches across. And then I'm going to take my knife and I'm going to cut it like a pie into 8 pieces, 8 even pieces. So in half, and then in half again, and then each of those pieces in half. So I want all my scones for presentation to be all the same size. And then I'm going to take them and place them on my parchment paper. Parchment paper is paper that has silicone on it. Miss Antonelli, could you do me a favor?
Yes.
Could you put that in the microwave for 30 seconds?
Will do.
See how handy she is? Say hello on the camera. So I'm gonna put those, I'm gonna leave space between, and I'm gonna space these out on the cookie sheet. And then I'm gonna top them with butter and sugar. Now we're gonna learn this week that sugar helps things brown. And there's a lot of sugar in butter too. So those two elements are going to really help to brown our scones.
You want it melted all the way?
Yeah. I'm taking my pastry brush. You know what that is. It's silicone pastry brush. And I'm going to take, I have a little bit of sugar. Now everything has to be measured out because your bags of flour are going to be for the scones and for your crunch top muffins. So you have to manually measure everything out. The sugar, the butter, everything has to be done. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome, sweetheart.
So now I'm gonna take this and I'm gonna spread this butter on the sides and on the top and all around. This is gonna help to crisp up my edges. So if you would do this while it's a circle, you're not gonna get a nice crispy edge all the way around your scone. This helps to crisp up those edges, and this provides individual pieces for people, so that's nice. Now if you don't like blueberries, you could put any fruit in there. You could leave the fruit out. You could do, instead of lemon peel, you could do a cinnamon sugar and top it with the cinnamon, a little cinnamon sugar mixture. So there's a million kind of scones. There's maple nut scones, so you could add some nuts in there. So you can take this recipe and you can modify it so many different ways. So many different ways. Okay, we're putting the sugar on to help that brown. Now this is a hot oven. I preheated my oven to 425. That's an extremely hot oven. These cook very quickly. The butter inside melts very fast, and it's puffing that dough up. We only worked our dough very little bit, so those layers stay very separate, okay? Unlike bread, bread has layers that are connected, and that's why it's spongy and you can pull this apart. This should be flaky, and I should be able to just lift that up, lift those layers up, and it should come apart really nicely. So that's what we want. This goes in the oven for 10 to 12 minutes. You just have to watch it and make sure. If you have them cut that size, it should really only take, I think this morning when I baked these, it took about 11 minutes. So make sure you have your mitts on your hands when you put things in the oven, both when you're putting it in and when you're taking it out, especially since our oven is 425 degrees. That's really hot. So there we go. We're gonna put these in the oven, and that's what they look like when they come out of the oven. Have a good day.